Arizona Territory, August 1880. The sun had dipped just far enough to bleed gold across the sage when we saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, heat shimmer off the hardpan. But then she stumbled, and the illusion broke. Her dress was torn up one side, hanging loose off one shoulder. Blood soaked the fabric around her belly, dark and wet. She was barefoot, one foot dragging useless behind her, and she held her side like she was trying to keep herself from spilling out. None of the other men moved. 5 of us on horseback, and not one stirred a muscle. "Jesus," Levi muttered. Beside me, "That woman's been shot." But they just sat there, half turned in their saddles, watching her limp across the dusk-silvered scrub like she was something unreal. A ghost, maybe. A warning that I swung down from my horse before I could think. My boots hit the dirt hard, and I walked straight toward her. Didn't wait for consensus or common sense. She was going to fall. I could see it in the set of her shoulders, the way her knees bowed inward with every step. When I reached her, she looked up. Her eyes were green and wide, lashes clumped with dust and sweat, and she didn't say a word. Just looked at me like she wasn't sure if I was real either. That I didn't ask what happened. I didn't ask her name. I just said, "You're all right now." And maybe that was a lie, but it was what she needed. She crumpled against me the second I touched her. She was light, too light, and burning up. I felt the stickiness of her blood seep through my shirt as I lifted her. Her breath was shallow and fast, and her body shook even in the heat that I carried her to the creek. The others followed slow, unsure, like this whole thing was bad luck they didn't want a part of. I ignored them by the time I set her down in the cottonwood shade and got her a drink. I knew the wound was a through and through. Looked like a small caliber rifle, left side. No exit wound on the back. That meant it was still in her. "You got a name?" I asked, washing the blood off her stomach. "Georgia," she whispered. "My name's Georgia." Her voice was hoarse but clear. She was dazed, not gone. I cleaned the wound with what I had. Just creek water and whiskey, and packed it tight. She didn't cry out once. Just bit her lip and kept her eyes on mine. I talked to her the whole time. Nothing important, just noise to hold her there. When Levi finally spoke, he was still on his horse. "We should ride on," he said. "We don't want trouble following." I didn't even look up. "Then ride." He grumbled something about women being bad luck, and the others started shifting in their saddles like they were weighing the same choice. But I wasn't leaving her. Didn't matter what followed. There was a woman bleeding into the dirt, and I could help. That was all I needed. "You ain't coming?" Levi asked. I took off my hat and wiped my brow. "No," he spat, clicked his reins, and rode off. The others followed, and just like that, I was alone with her. Georgia. She passed out not long after. I sat beside her as the stars came out, swatting mosquitoes and listening to the cottonwoods whisper. I kept my hand near my rifle, just in case, and watched her breathe. Each shallow rise of her chest was a small victory. I'd never left a soul behind before. I wasn't about to start now. She burned all night. I kept her in the shade by the cottonwoods, laid my bedroll out under her, and folded my coat for a pillow. She shifted in and out of sleep, never still for long. Sometimes she'd moan real soft, just the ghost of a sound. And other times she'd bolt upright with a gasp like she was drowning. I had to hold her shoulders down once, and her hands went for my throat before she realized where she was. "Easy," I whispered. "You're safe now." She blinked at me like she couldn't make sense of my face. "My babies," she said. "Where are they?" "Babies?" I asked. "You got children?" Her lip trembled, and she nodded once before falling back against the roll, eyes glassing over. I kept the fire low and the water nearby. Poured it slow down her throat when she could take it, wiped her skin with a damp cloth when the fever climbed too high. The bullet hadn't hit anything vital, far as I could tell, but infection didn't care much about vital. Out here, heat alone could kill a person if you didn't watch close. By dawn, the worst had passed. Her breathing steadied. She was still hot, but not climbing anymore. I sat with my back against a rock, eyelids heavy, rifle laid across my lap. When she stirred next, her voice was clearer. Ellen and Elijah, she said, eyes still closed. 7 and 5. He took them. After he shot me. Who took them? Pike Crenshaw. Her lips curled around the name like it tasted of rust. He came to trade horses. I told him no. Said my husband'd be back by sunfall. He wasn't. You were alone. I asked. She nodded. He waited. Pretended to help me bring in the wash. Then he forced his way inside. Her voice cracked. Tied me to the stove leg and dragged the children out by their arms. Said he'd raise and better in. I could. I felt cold then, colder than I should have in that sun-drenched gully. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Why didn't he kill me? She whispered. Why not finish it? So you'd live with it, I said, before I could stop myself. She looked at me. Really looked. Her face was swollen. Pale, blood still dried in her hair, but her eyes cut through me. I ain't gonna live with it, she said. I'm gonna find them. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew what it meant. A man like Crenshaw doesn't give up what he's taken. And if he's gone to ground, it'd take time. Maybe weeks. Maybe more. I'll help, I said. We'll find them. Her lip quivered, and she nodded once. Why are you doing this? She asked. I looked past her, out toward the ridges where the shadows were pulling back slow. Because someone should. Her breathing slowed. Her fingers found mine in the dirt, rough with dried blood, and she didn't let go. I sat with her till the sun cleared the rocks, and in that strange hush of morning, cicadas barely buzzing, stream whispering like a secret, I made her a promise, not out loud, not yet, but in the marrow of my bones. I promised I'd bring those children back, and no matter what it took. Maria Garcia lived 12 miles south of where I found Georgia, across a hard stretch of dry basin and antelope grass. We made it slow, with Georgia slumped against me in the saddle, half conscious and shivering. Maria had a way with wounds and secrets. She kept a clean ranch house, spoke little, and never asked questions she didn't need answers to. When we arrived, Maria didn't flinch, just looked at the blood, helped me carry Georgia inside, and started boiling water. You bring me strays. Like this again, she said. You better bring more gauze. Georgia slept for 2 days in Maria's spare room. Fever broke slow, but steady. I stayed out of the way mostly. Fixed fence posts, hauled water, cleaned tack that didn't need cleaning just to keep my hands busy. On the third morning, I brought her a bowl of broth. She was sitting up, hair loose around her face, eyes still, shadowed but clearer now. She took the bowl with shaking hands and sipped slow. I sat in the corner, letting the silence stretch between us. I know you, she said. I looked up. You came by the peach stand 2 summers back. I was heavy with Elijah. You bought 2 baskets and didn't haggle. She smiled faintly. You said the peaches were sweet enough to justify the price. I remembered. It was a blistering July day, and she'd worn a pale blue dress. Her smile had been smaller then, more guarded. I didn't know your name, I said. I wasn't allowed to give it, she murmured. Not unless he approved. I didn't press. Let it sit. My husband, she added after a moment. He was controlling. Everything had to be earned. Smiles. Kindness. The right to speak. I heard the edge of shame in her voice and hated it. She didn't know me anything, least of all apology. You're free of him now, I said. She met my eyes. Am I? That's when I understood. Even dead, a man like that leaves his fingers wrapped around your ribs. I stood, unsure of what to do with my hands. We'll leave soon. I'll get supplies. Maria has a spare Winchester if we need it. She nodded, setting the bowl aside. Fletcher. Yeah. I'm not helpless. I know. But I am not ready. Not strong enough yet. I sat again, slower this time. You don't have to be strong right now. Just willing. She looked down at her lap. Her fingers picked at the threads of a blanket. Then, with great care, she reached across the space between us. Her hand hovered, uncertain, before resting atop mine. "You're the first man to say that and mean it." She said that I didn't move, didn't speak. Just let the weight of that sit where it fell. Later that night, under a tarp of stars behind Maria's barn, I told her plainly, "We'll find your children." She turned her head on the pillow of bundled grain sacks, eyes glinting in the dark. "You swear?" "I swear." She closed her eyes. I saw her lips move in the shape of "thank you," but no sound came out. That I lay awake beside her till the crickets gave way to the hush before dawn. The porch creaked under our boots as the morning broke pale and wide across the desert. Maria had left coffee in a blue enamel pot, still warm by some grace. A pair of magpies argued in the mesquite beyond the fence line. Georgia sat beside me, her color better, but the stiffness in her movement betrayed the pain still riding her ribs. That I handed her the cup. She took it without a word, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I got word," I said. She turned to me, slowly. "Pike Crenshaw's been seen north of here, near Winslow. He's off the main routes, traveling light, but not quiet. Took a wagon. 2 children matching Ellen and Elijah's ages were spotted with him." Her hands tightened on the tin cup. "Are they all right?" "Can't say for sure. But they're alive." She shut her eyes like she was steadying something inside herself. "I need to ride. You need to heal," I said gently. She shot me a look, sharp, proud. "They're my children." "I know. And we'll go? But if you tear that wound open, we lose days." She flinched, but didn't argue. "I scouted the area," I added. "Found a few express riders passing through town. One of them saw Crenshaw's wagon 3 days back. Heading east. Moving slower now. Wheels are bad, probably overloaded. So we can catch them." "We can. But you'll ride behind me till your side says otherwise." Her mouth opened to protest, then closed again. She stared out across the brittle grass and nodded. "Fair." I stood. "I'll pack the horses tonight. We leave at first light." She looked up at me, and for a long breath, we just held each other's gaze. No fear, no request, just understanding. Later that evening, as the last of the day bled red across the porch, Georgia spoke. "When I married him, I thought it'd save me. From loneliness, from my father's fists, from my own softness." "And did it?" I asked. She turned her head. "It made everything worse. And I was too proud to say it. You're not the only one who mistook survival for peace." We didn't speak after that, just sat and let the dark come over us like a blanket. Maria brought stew and said nothing. She knew enough not to break the quiet. That night, Georgia walked out to the stables by herself, hand pressed to her bandage but standing straight. I followed at a distance, watching as she ran her palm along the flank of the mare I'd saddled for the trip. "She'll carry me?" she asked when I approached. "She'll carry you far." She looked at me in that way she did, like she was testing the truth of the thing against her own instincts. Then she nodded. "We leave together, Fletcher. Not with me behind. Beside you." I hesitated, then gave her a slow, respectful nod. "Beside me, then." The look in her eyes was like dawn over rock, hard, quiet, and full of fight. That we left at first light, side by side. The trail stretched long and lean beneath us. Days passed in dust and silence. The only sounds the slow creak of saddle leather and the soft clop of hooves over sun-baked ground. Georgia rode with her back straight and her jaw clenched, never once asking to stop unless the horses needed water. She said little, but every time I glanced over, I saw it in her face, steel, sharpened by worry that I tended her bandages at night. She bore it with tight-lipped silence, never wincing. One evening, I noticed the bruising on her side turning from black to yellow-green. Healing, but ugly. Her body was catching up to her will, but just barely. On the 4th day, we found sign. A wagon trail veering off the main path, ruts cutting deep into soft earth that hadn't seen wheels in months. We followed it down into a cedar-choked gully, the smell of smoke faint on the wind. Georgia leaned forward in her saddle, eyes scanning the trees with a hunter's focus. Then she pointed. There, a small rise above the hollow had the look of a camp that had been packed fast, ashes still warm, coals red under the white crust. A tin plate sat overturned beside the fire, and boot tracks led out both ways, east and deeper into the draw. I knelt near the fire, brushing ash away from. A scrap of cloth snagged on a root. Pale pink. Faded flowers. A child's dress hem. Georgia stared at it like she might fall. "Ellen's," she said, voice tight. Her fingers trembled when she took the fabric. She held it to her chest and closed her eyes, breath hitching in her throat. I waited, letting her feel whatever came. When she opened her eyes again, they were dry but fierce. "How far ahead are they?" she asked. "Hours, maybe less. The wagon's limping. They're stopping more often. One of the wheels is cracked, looks like. We catch them tonight." I shook my head. Too risky in the dark. We camp just past that ridge and move at first light. She didn't like it. I saw the protest rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down. That night, as we camped just beyond the draw, Georgia sat sharpening a knife she'd taken from Maria's kitchen. Her hands were sure now. No tremble, no flinch. She wasn't just waiting to get her children back. She was preparing to take them. "You ever shoot?" I asked, handing her the spare Winchester. She nodded once. "He taught me. My husband. But only when he drank. Made me hit cans while he laughed. And I never missed." She said it with such calm, it raised the hair on my neck. That we went over the plan in low voices. I'd draw them out, offer a trade, play the drifter angle. Georgia would flank the camp, slip behind the lean-to, get to the children. "They won't be expecting me," she said. "They won't expect anything." I agreed. "Men like Crenshaw always believe they've already won." She looked at me. "You believe in justice, Fletcher?" "No," I said, "but I believe in right and wrong. And I believe in you." She nodded once. "That'll do." We packed light and slept in shifts. I watched her as she lay on her side, Ellen's fabric strip still clutched in one hand, her other resting near the Winchester. The time for grief had passed. What came next was fire. At first light, we moved. The gully narrowed into a box canyon before opening into a dry basin ringed with jagged outcrops. The crippled wagon sat low between two rocks, one wheel propped with stones, canvas cover sagging from a snapped rod. Smoke curled from a fire pit off to the side. 3 men milled about, rough-looking, one older, one red-haired, one tall and lean with a bandolier slung loose. Pike Crenshaw. I counted them twice. No children in sight. Georgia was already moving, circling wide behind a curtain of mesquite. She moved with purpose. Head low, steps sure, rifle strapped tight to her back and Maria's kitchen knife in her boot. I stepped into the clearing like I didn't know better. "Howdy," I called out. .3 heads turned. Pike's eyes narrowed. "You lost, friend?" he asked, hand inching toward his hip. I raised my hand slow, easy. "Not if there's coffee on. Name's Morgan. Horse through a shoe back yonder. Saw your smoke. Thought I'd ask if you had a spare nail or two." Pike squinted. "Ain't got time for drifters." "Don't take much time to lend a nail," I said, smiling like a fool. "Or maybe just share a little fire while I fix my luck." Red Hair stepped forward, suspicious but not yet twitchy. "You armed?" "Always," I said. "But not for you. Unless you make me." That was enough. Pike's hand darted for his gun. I was faster. My Colt barked once, and Pike dropped with a hole just left of his sternum. The red-haired one went for his rifle, but I'd already shifted left, caught him in the shoulder with my second shot, then kicked the tall one in the knee. As he drew, he fell hard, groaning, and by then Georgia was there. She burst from behind the lean-to like a thunderclap, hair wild, eyes locked. She didn't hesitate, drove the butt of her rifle into the redhead's temple, knocking him flat. The tall one reached for her ankle. Bad move. She brought her boot down on his wrist and leveled the barrel at his face. "Move again, and I paint this dust with your teeth." He didn't move that I ducked into the wagon. Heart thudding point, two small figures crouched inside. Ellen and Elijah, filthy and wide-eyed. "It's okay," I whispered. "Mama's here." They stared at me like I was a stranger until Georgia climbed in behind me. Ellen, Elijah, their eyes snapped to her. Silence hung thick. Then, all at once, Elijah let out a sob and flung himself forward. Ellen followed, clinging to her mother's neck so hard I thought she might vanish into her. Georgia held them both, rocking slightly, whispering their names like a prayer that I stepped back and gave them space. After, we tied the surviving men, hands behind their backs, mouths stuffed with their own torn shirts. Left them a jug of water and some jerky. No sense killing when the desert would do the job for us. Georgia looked at the lean-to. Rough boards, canvas tarp, old army crates stacked high. She struck a match and tossed it in. The fire caught quick that as the smoke twisted skyward. I saw her, silhouetted in front of it, both children clutching her sides, rifle still slung across her back. That we didn't say a word, we just turned west and rode. We followed the Verde River south, keeping to the tree line, riding slow. The children didn't talk much. Ellen sat quiet in the saddle with Georgia, her head tucked under her mother's chin. Elijah rode with me, hands wrapped around the saddle horn, legs too short to hang properly. His face stayed solemn, too still for a boy of 5, but every so often, he'd glance over at his sister and back to Georgia, like checking to make sure they were real. That night, we made camp in a shallow bend of the river where the water curled, slow over flat stones. I built a fire low and broad for warmth, not light. The kids curled up together under a blanket, bellies full for the first time in days. Georgia sat nearby, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring into the flames. "They remembered me," she said suddenly, voice low that I looked over. I thought, maybe they wouldn't. "It's only been a week," but she didn't finish. "They remembered," I said. "Of course they did." Her eyes glistened in the firelight. "He told me once, Crenshaw, when he tied me to the stove, that they'd forget me within the month. Said children forget fast if you feed him good." I shook my head. He was wrong. She gave a shaky breath that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob. When I held them in that wagon, it didn't feel real. I kept thinking I'd wake up still bleeding in the sage. "You didn't." "No," she turned toward me. "I didn't." I looked away then, not because I wanted to, because I felt something rising in my chest I hadn't let myself feel in years. "You got a place to go?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. "My father's dead. My husband's dead. The house is ash or scavenged by now. I don't own land. Don't got money. So no." "No." We sat in silence again, the river whispering nearby, the wind soft through cottonwood leaves. "Finally," I said, "you have me. If you want." She turned sharply. "What?" I met her gaze. "I don't mean as a debt. Not as a man trying to fix you. I just mean, I'll stand by you, Georgia. I've seen you bleed, fight, walk through fire. And I'd ride through worse. For you. For them." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "I'm not looking to be your next mistake." She stared for a long time, then moved to sit beside me. When her shoulder brushed mine, I didn't move. Her head settled against me, light and warm. "I'm not promising anything," she whispered. "I'm tired, and broken in ways I don't even understand yet." "I know, but if you stay, I won't ask you to go." I nodded. That was enough. Behind us, the fire crackled and popped. The kids stirred once, then stilled. Georgia reached for my hand and laced her fingers with mine that we didn't kiss. Didn't speak, but something passed between us, soft and real and new. A future. Not built yet, but waiting. We reached Pine Hollow 4 days later, a pinprick of a town nestled between sun-bleached ridges and a stand of crooked pines. Not much to it. A dry goods store, a chapel missing half its steeple, and a livery that doubled as a place to get your boots patched. But it was enough. We traded the horses for rest and grain, then bartered for a room above the old boarding house with 2 beds and a cracked window facing west. I worked odd jobs, fixing fence rails, hauling lumber, even stacking bricks for a man building something that looked more hopeful than practical. Georgia took in sewing, using Maria's old machine we'd strapped to the saddle and dragged across half the territory. The kids adjusted quicker than either of us. Ellen made friends with the grocer's daughter. Elijah liked to carve pieces of pine into strange, crooked animals. Quiet work, but proud when he showed them off. And Georgia, she smiled more. It wasn't constant. There were mornings she moved slow, breath caught in her throat. Nights where she'd sit on the porch, shoulders drawn tight, watching shadows stretch across the dirt road like they meant something. But she always came back. One afternoon, I found her in the yard behind the boarding house, washing clothes in a tin tub. Her sleeves were rolled high, skin freckled by sun. The kids were chasing each other through puddles, laughing like it was the only thing that ever mattered. She looked up at me and smiled, small but steady. "I was thinking," she said. "Dangerous." I replied. She smirked. "Maybe." She dried her hands and walked over, tugging me by the shirt collar toward the oak tree that shaded the yard. "You helped me get my children back. You stayed when no one else would have. You saw me when I was nothing but blood and rage and fear, and you never looked away. I never could." She touched my cheek, thumb tracing the scar near my jaw. "I don't want to survive anymore, Fletcher. I want to live. With you. If you'll have me." I was quiet a long beat. Then I took her hand. "Always." We married. Under that oak tree 2 weeks later. Just us, the kids, and the preacher who stammered through the vows like he didn't quite know how to speak over joy. Ellen picked flowers for her mother's hair. Elijah carved a pair of rings from pine wood. Georgia wore a second-hand dress she hemmed herself. I wore my best shirt, the one without holes. It wasn't grand, but it was real. That night, Georgia sat on the porch while I whittled a toy horse. For Elijah, the wind was soft. The stars were coming out. "I don't need perfect," she said, sipping tea from a tin cup. "I don't even need easy." I looked over at her. "What do you need?" She smiled. "Just this. Honest and full." I nodded. "Then that's what we'll build." And we did. Not from scratch. No one ever does. But from the ashes forward.